Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly Dyer, and I am from Audreys Books. And on behalf of Audreys, I would like to welcome you all to tonight's event with Miriam Steinberg. Before we start, it is important for me to take a moment to acknowledge that Audreys is located on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, and traveling route to the Cree, the Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuits whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. As we are virtual, we also acknowledge that there are individuals joining us from other territories from across Canada. So thank you. And now, before I introduce our special guests, I just want to mention some housekeeping that we will be recording tonight. We also have the author's books, and they are available online. I will be putting a link in the chat along with our contact information. And we will also be having an opportunity for folks to ask questions. So if you have a question, just please put it in the chat, and we'll be able to hopefully answer some questions if there's time. We're offering curbside pickup delivery, of course, for books, for anyone who wants to get this fabulous book in their hands. And if you are joining us from a further distance, we can also mail books anywhere. So, and now for our special guests. Oops, just one sec. There we go. Joining us tonight is Miriam Steinberg. She's currently a writer. In the past, she's been a visual artist and an event organizer. For 11 years, she was the brains and brawn of the House Festival, which brought live performances of all kinds into people's living rooms and backyards throughout her hometown of Vancouver, BC. Miriam was nominated for the YWCA Women of Distinction Award for her work on the festival. Her first book, Catalog Baby, a memoir of infertility, is, yes, as I said, her first book. And joining her tonight is Dr. Alda No. She's a registered doctor of TCM and an acupuncturist who has been practicing since 2005 and specializing in integrated fertility and obstetrical acupuncture and medicine since 2007. Alda is co-owner and executive director of Whole Family Health, a multidisciplinary wellness center in Edmonton that focuses on integrative family medicine and reproductive health. And I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi, Alda. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, Alda, do you want to?
Yes.
Right.
So, yeah, oh my goodness. Thank you so much for inviting me to moderate, Miriam. It is a real privilege for me, and I am honored and grateful. I have to say, I love your graphic memoir for so many reasons. So just for a little bit of background, Miriam's sister, Gabrielle, is actually a dear Chinese medicine sister to me. So we went to Chinese medicine school together 20 years ago. And I think that's how I originally met you, Miriam, was through Gabrielle, and then through like your Friday night dinners at your parents' place when they would just open their doors to all of us. So special. And so we're connected in that way. And so, of course, I'm, also honored to have been able to offer you my care in Gabrielle's absence when she was overseas doing Syrian refugee relief work. This family is incredible. And then also in the House Festival. So my partner is a musician, an East Vancouver musician. We've since moved. We're in Edmonton now, but in Vancouver. He's a musician, so he's played many a gig. We've attended many a gig and performances through in the House Festival that you founded, and you just created this incredible space for all of us to collect in. And then, of course, as someone who has worked in integrated fertility medicine for 14 years, this book is really meaningful to me. And then also as someone who's had my own 7-year fertility journey. So for all of these reasons, I feel so connected, super, super connected to your book. And I loved reading it because I know you and I love you and I know the characters, and I'm just, your story is so close to me in so many ways. And I'm, really invested in the destigmatization and normalization of this very common human experience of disruption to the reproductive story. And I think that, Miriam, your story actually really solidified for me the importance of personal storytelling to humanize the experience of infertility and pregnancy loss. It was such a brave and courageous thing for you to do, to share your story in this way, Miriam. It's like so honest and so vulnerable, and Catalog Baby is just, it's so authentic and accurate to real life. And I think there's just, I mean, gosh, there's so much laid bare within these pages. Like, it's a lot, I think, to put all these private moments out there. And, you know, knowing that once it's published, it's just going to be out there forever. And so I am curious, what was this process like for you as you wrote it, and what compelled you to do it, Miriam?
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of layers to it, for sure. I mean, one of the hugest reasons for which I wrote Catalog Baby was because when I was going through my own fertility journey, which started in 2014, I couldn't find the resources that really spoke to me and that meant something to me as I was going through it. And then just like one thing after the other happened in my story. And I'm like, this is something that needs to be shared, because I wish I had this book when I was going through it. And so I felt really this compulsion to bring it out there and to create a resource to help women who are going through infertility or miscarriage, to make them feel less alone and that they're not broken. And to kind of really destigmatize and take away the silence around that, and to be able to start a conversation, and to continue that conversation, and to bring that conversation into different contexts other than, you know, like me talking about the fact that I had a miscarriage, and all of a sudden all these, when I mention it to them, they start telling me about their story. And so I think it's important to take it, like those conversations are very important, but also to take it to the broader community, to start talking about it when you're in high school, even in sex ed, and as you get older, you live with this thing of like, oh, pregnancy is going to be easy, and so often it's not. And so, yeah, I set about writing the story. I actually started writing when, before I even knew what the outcome was going to be. I was still in the throes of trying to have a baby. I even had a miscarriage as I was writing. And as a result, I was really aware of what scenes and what parts of my story to write when. So when I was pregnant, I couldn't bring myself to write sections that were very heart-wrenching, like miscarriage and loss, because I didn't want to impose that sadness on my baby that I was carrying, and it's like a big load, you know. And B, I didn't want to create this extra stress that might endanger the pregnancy. So it was a very delicate balance. And so I would actually like jump around in the story and write it as vignettes, and then tie it in all together at the end, so that the flow was logical and made sense. So that's a bit of like how, kind of like my motivation for writing it, and how I went about writing it, and taking care of myself, just being, having grace with myself, and letting myself be in the feels, because it's hard. It's really hard. And you're constantly confronted with the losses as you're writing. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm writing this, and I'm like, I'm torturing myself in a way, right? And because I'm like really constantly reminding myself of it. But it was very cathartic. So it helped dull the edges of my grief and make it less omnipresent. And yeah.
Wow, what an intense thing to be in this sort of creative process of creating this, like project, graphic novel, as you're in the creative process of trying to create a healthy pregnancy at the same time.
Yeah.
So Miriam, what made you decide to write Catalog Baby as a graphic memoir?
So there's lots of reason. I'm actually going to do a screen share right now and just kind of, it'll help kind of explain a little bit. So, all right. So you guys are all seeing that, why a graphic novel format? All right. So one of the reasons was there's so many layers to the story. And to me, I'm a very visual person, and the experiences of going through loss are so visceral that so often there aren't the words to describe it. Or there's just too many words. You just get lost in the words, and there's so many layers to it. And so like, how do you layer all the different aspects, like your point of view of like the outside world, you looking at the outside world and experiencing the outside world, and then your internal dialogue that's going on. So one of the things that I was able to do was, for example, this is an image of my biological clock, who's kind of my inner voice. And so often I would be in these conversations with people who either had advice for me, unsolicited advice, or they were kind of like, oh, you can have my kids, no problem. And like, eh. But really inside, I was like, be quiet, no, I can't handle this. And I was, there's a lot of bitterness and anger and like, so I was able to put all those layers of thought and reality and outward conversation and inside conversation all in one image. So it was a lot easier to do that kind of thing. Another reason was I got to have fun with different points of view. So I have scenes where the tools and the eggs and the sperm all have personalities, and they all have their own story. And it kind of added an extra layer of intimacy with my experience for me, because I would imagine this, like, what are the eggs saying? How would they feel? How would, oh, we're really sad because out of this batch of embryos, like 3 of them died. Oh, we're really sad. And like the flirting between the sperm and the eggs, it was really fun. And again, offered a different point of view. So it's not just me being like, here's the medical procedure of how you fertilize an embryo, and what does the die-off of embryos look like when you are waiting that 5 or 6 day period during IVF and before you have an embryo transfer, and what does it look like when the embryo is entered into your uterus, and like how does the embryo feel, or the blastocyst, how does it feel? So that was really fun to be able to do that. And then, of course, with images, there's just no running away from the truth and the intensity of the emotion and the physicality of the experience. When you're just reading words, you're kind of creating your own little film in your head. But when you're with images, you can't really do that. You're thrown right into the person's story. You can't run away from it. And you can't know it until you know it when it comes to miscarriage and infertility. And for me, this is the closest way of making someone know it in a deeper way than they would if it was just words. And it was interesting working with the illustrator. So the illustrator is Chris Dash, and he did an amazing job translating things, the script and I'll show you a little bit of the process. But he also had to do a lot of research. So this is a little video of him talking about the experience.
Moments like when she said that she was in stirrups in the chair, the gynecological chair in stirrups. I had no idea really what they look like, and nails, I think they're hanging from the ceiling, like they were like two hoops from the ceiling with their legs in, and she's like, that's not it. So there were definitely times where I had to do some research, because what I imagined was not even close to the realities.
Yeah. So, this is a fun little moment of him, like, he's a guy, he doesn't have, like, there's no way he can really fully understand the physicality and of what's been going on. So this is kind of like a funny little moment. But when you're with this, he had to really kind of live it. So when he was drawing, he would actually like, we had reference photos, and he would actually like embody the emotion. So he would sit at his computer and be like, contort his face into sadness or into anger. And that kind of helped him really put that emotion into the page. So I was saying that he used a lot of reference photos. I actually photographed and videotaped most of my journey. And at first I didn't know what that was going to look like. And this is a bit of a side note, just so for people who are curious about how the graphic novel came to be, and the images went from like nothing to everything. Oops. This is actually my one of my egg retrievals. And these are photos that we took during it. The bottom right is my actual eggs, which was super cool to see. And then I would make stick figure drawings based on how I imagined the story to go. And then he would take those and make rough sketches. And then from those rough sketches, he would make the ink drawings. And then I would take those drawings and color them. So that just kind of gives you an idea of how, he had to like have those, be able to see the photos of me experiencing all the procedures and the emotions and all of that in order to help him put himself into the story and create it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So, wow, that's incredible. Just all the layers, hey? And like the images really, it brings the whole experience into like a more sort of multi-dimensional experience. And I have to say, like, so for me, like as someone who, like knows quite a bit about the process, there's a way in which the images are very powerful for me and like filled in a lot of blanks that I didn't even know that I had. So I feel like, it's so that video of Chris Dash and like it's like, he doesn't know, he's never been on a gynecological table. He doesn't know what stirrups look like. So it's like, that speaks, I think, volumes to the whole thing of, I can read about something but unless I've kind of experienced it and been on the inside of that experience, I can't really, imagine it in its entirety, with all of the sort of nuances of the experience. But with a graphic novel, it's like, gosh, like I didn't even know I had these gaps in my, in my knowing, and I did. And so the images were really powerful in terms of just like depicting different parts of the experience. So for example, like I have supported so many single parent by choice patients throughout the years. And yet there was so much that was conveyed in Catalog Baby that I didn't even really think about necessarily. I love that Catalog Baby really gives voice to this super brave, experience of like people who choose to go about this solo, people like you. And so, yeah, I mean, there were some pretty kind of nuanced, complex, kind of awkward moments that you had, that you had to navigate on your journey. And it was so, it was just I really enjoyed reading those parts and seeing the images. So I don't know, like, do you have a favorite scene in Catalog Baby that kind of speaks to the experience of a single parent by choice that you'd be willing to share with us?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that, as a single mom by choice, what I had to do was find sperm. And so I spent a lot of time trying to decide, am I going to use anonymous sperm from a sperm bank? Am I going to use a known donor? So I talked to a bunch of, probably 3 or 4 friends of mine. And there was one situation in particular that ended up being just absolutely hilarious. So, like the first, I don't remember how many tries, maybe like 3 or 4 tries, I had used an anonymous donor, and I was at the clinic doing IUI, the intrauterine insemination, where they basically turkey baste you at the clinic. But all of a sudden it was New Year's Day and the clinic is closed. So what am I going to do? So this is what this reading is about. Can you see the reading DIY sperm donor?
Yeah.
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 All right. The clinic is closed over Christmas and New Year's, so if you wanted to try again, you'll have to wait until mid-January. But I'm sure I'm going to ovulate during that time. What am I supposed to do? I don't want to wait. Maybe this is the right time to use my known donor and do it DIY. I hope he's still into it. Hey, Larry, been a while. Wondering if you'd still be into being a donor. Yes. So this is a flashback. May 2015. Oh, hey, Cass. Hi, Barry. How's it going? Well, I'm pregnant. Here for my first blood test. That's great. Congrats. I'm about to start trying too. I just have to find out if I'm healthy and fertile. I'm looking for potential sperm donors. So if you know anyone smart and handsome and might be interested, I'd be a donor. Wait, what? Did you just? Yeah, sure. Why not? You know, it's a you and her decision, right? Yep. No problem. I'm cool with it. Just then, I got called to do my blood test. All done. Me too. Do you want to join us for lunch and keep the discussion going? So fast forward. And while the donor went to my backyard studio to prep the goods, I sterilized the syringe. In you go, little syringe. The pharmacist said 15 seconds. It's not melting, so that's good. Poke. Ow! Note to self, don't stick finger in boiling water to sink syringe. Do you think that's long enough? I think so. We now have a theoretically somewhat sterile syringe. Probably a lot more sterile than a dildo in any case. Ha! Shit. Not nervous at all, are you? Bing! The deed is done. Here we go. Maybe local homegrown sperm direct from the source will work. That was excellent. We covered up the cup with cellophane just in case. Thank you so much. I can't believe this is actually happening. There it is. Here we go. There's a fair amount. I'm glad he had good aim. This should be easy. Come on, you. Get in there. I think I got it all. The absurdity of the whole situation hit me again. Careful you don't lose your sperm all over the carpet. Phew. Okay. Down to business. Do I snap out the bubbles? I guess that's good enough. Do I do this standing, sitting, lying down? Okay, I'm doing this. Wait, won't it just drip out if you do it standing up? Oh, maybe. Okay, let's try it like this. Kinda hard to see. Done. I hope it went in deep enough. Nicely done, I just gotta say. What do I do now? I think I have to be upside down. Didn't you Google this? Is this right? Whoops, I forgot to put my underwear back on. Oh well, tap, tap, tap. Maybe this is better. Not very sustainable though. Tap, 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 tap. That'll be easier. Tap, 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 tap. It says you're supposed to masturbate right now. Orgasms contract the uterus and encourage the cervix to suck up the sperm. I can do that. That's where I draw the line. I'm out of here, friend. Bye, friend. Okay, thanks for everything. Love you. And that is when you know you're friends for life. The DIY didn't take. So that's one of the really funny moments that really stands out in my head. It was just, we were on the floor laughing the entire time. It was just ridiculous and silly, and would never have happened if I hadn't chosen to be a single mother by choice. But there were also some really intense, sad moments and moments that really highlighted the loneliness. And I think even when you're partnered, there's a lot of loneliness around all things to do with infertility and miscarriage. And if you have to have a DNC or a D&E because you had a missed miscarriage, or you have to terminate because of a fetal genetic anomaly. So, you know, like images like this where I was going through a termination, and, you know, you can imagine that there's nurses and doctors surrounding me as I'm walking down this hallway towards the surgical room. But fundamentally, you know, like I'm just alone. it didn't matter how many people are around me. I was deeply, deeply alone, and very sad. And it wasn't a decision that I regretted, and I still don't regret, but it was, it was a baby that I really wanted. And so there's just a really deep loneliness that's attached, that is even stronger when you're doing it on your own. And then, in this particular instance, I woke up from this surgery and I was separated by a curtain by someone who had just given birth, and they were all excited and they were showing their baby to their partner. And, I'm like shocked by this, and then like confused by the mundanity of like nurses and doctors talking at me saying, yeah, everything went great, and okay, you're almost ready to go home now. Do you have somebody to take you home? And I'm just like, what's going on? And so there's a lot of things like organizing who's going to take you home and who's going to be with you once you're home. That if you don't have a partner, you just have to really figure that out in a way that you wouldn't otherwise. Yeah. So those are the moments that really stand out.
Yeah, for sure. Gosh, Miriam, so brave. I mean, I think there's no way going around, speaking to any experience, involving infertility or miscarriage, and not touching on just what a roller coaster it is. Like, it's a real roller coaster of a journey, isn't it? It's like, I love how Catalog Baby really demonstrates this sort of full spectrum human experience of the journey, like the highs and the lows, and just like the relentless cycle of hope and disappointment. It's so, gosh, like I just totally rode that, with you as I read the book. And I have to say, as a healthcare provider myself, and also having been through it myself, I am really acutely aware of the challenge in walking this fine line between like the body and the mechanics of it all, while also taking care and holding space for the intense degree of emotion that comes along with these struggles. And I think that Catalog Baby really offers an opportunity for fertility and reproductive healthcare providers to just like to see through the eyes of a fertility or pregnancy loss patient. And, I just think that as fertility healthcare providers, like we forget, it's like we actually become a part of people's stories. And so, having been on both sides, like, so for me as a fertility patient, I know that I have this, one moment in my memory that replays all the time, even to this day. And so it's in the ultrasound where my doctor tells me that there's no longer a heartbeat, and that I have miscarried. And so, and he's part of it. And like I said, like to this day, I still play it. And so, healthcare providers just play this really important role. And I think that it's very poignant. Like your book is like this opportunity. And I'm wondering if is there a moment like this that stands out for you in Catalog Baby that you think could like help provide insight to fertility healthcare providers? Just helps to help them understand.
It makes such a difference when your healthcare provider, whether it's your fertility doctor, whether it's an emergency room doctor, whether it's somebody who is dealing with like a surgical procedure, whether it's acupuncture, whoever your healthcare provider is, that they have a level of compassion and have this balance between they have a job to do and they have a human in front of them who is experiencing something very traumatic. And one of the hardest moments that I lived through was the termination. I had a baby who had a fetal genetic anomaly, and I had to decide, am I going to keep him? Am I going to terminate the pregnancy? You know, I was going at it as a single mom by choice. There were like so many layers, and I did so much research. I talked to so many people about what to do, whether it's like healthcare people or people who have children who, like in my case, I had a baby who had Down syndrome. So I talked to parents who gave birth to babies with Down syndrome. I talked to midwives who birthed, and it was like 50-50. Sometimes they, you know, at birth they died, or they didn't live for very long, or they had like intense surgery, or they were basically okay and just had developmental delays. So, and you just don't know what you're going to get. And so it's this really, really, really difficult decision that you're faced with. And it's so important for whoever you're coming in contact with in the healthcare field, for them to understand that this is not an easy decision, and that your soul and your heart and your mind and everything, your emotions, are deeply, deeply entrenched. So this is a scene I decided to terminate, and it's a 2-day procedure. And the first day they have to prep your cervix. So this is a trigger warning for if this is really difficult for you to watch or to hear, just be aware that this is difficult. Okay, I'm just gonna share the screen now and try not to cry.
I'm already crying.
Okay. All right. Ready? I guess so. Just lie back and try to relax. Way to ask the impossible. We're gonna get started, okay? You'll feel my hands and then the speculum. I'll talk you through it as we go along. No! This is my body talking, not my mind. There's this weird like separation between the two. We can stop if you want. I just need a minute. You don't have to go through this. What's happening? I haven't changed my mind. Why won't my body let me do this? Okay, let's try again. I can do this. I'll be okay. Sob. We need to stop. We can't go through the procedure when you're this upset. You need to decide what you want to do. I don't care either way, but we won't keep going with you in this state. You can go home, but if you change your mind again, you need to know that not only will it be a 2-week wait because the OR is very busy, but we'll also have to add a 3rd day to prep your cervix. The baby will be bigger, and we need to make sure your cervix doesn't get damaged in the final step. I can't wait another 2 weeks. I need to do this today. Or you can go back to the waiting room and really think this through. We have a lot of women to get through today, but I'm willing to let you come back in after them if that's what you choose to do. It'll be at least 2 or 3 hours before we get back to you, though. Thank God. I realized I couldn't do this alone, so I called my sister Gabrielle. When it finally came to be my turn again several hours later, she came with me into the procedure room while my mom, who had also arrived to pick me up, sat in the waiting room. Okay, the speculum is in. We're about to insert the first laminaria. Focus on the voices. Focus on the voices. Don't stop talking. You've got this. You're strong. Tell me again the reasons. Just keep repeating them over and over again. Ow, you're digging your nails into my hand. You don't need to be a pillar for anyone else. You're doing great. We're going to insert another one in now. This is the right decision for you. One ear was listening to the doctor. The other ear was listening to my sister. The steady drone of their voices was the only thing that got me through. So, you know, this doctor, she really had to walk the fine line between the logistics and her schedule and compassion. And how do you do that? How do you do that kindly? knowing that this person in front of you is devastated and needs that time and is battling like the body and the reactions and the visceral nature of what's going on in her brain, or like, or, you know, like they're battling each other. And it's not that doctor's job to be my counselor. It's not that doctor's job for me, for her to be a shoulder for me to cry on. Her job is to do her job, which is to insert the laminaria and get the procedure going. But I mean, in this particular scene, it was, I think she did a relatively good job of kind of walking that balance and being like, we're going to give you the space to do it, but also I have a job to do. You know, and I had so many other experiences throughout my journey where I didn't get that. I didn't get doctors being compassionate or being understanding. They just wanted to get the job done. And sometimes it was, you know, like a DNC for a miscarriage, and they just treated me like crap. And, you know, like I don't want to knock the medical profession, because I wouldn't be where I am without Western medicine. But I think it's really important to keep that education going and really share stories so that everyone who has contact with someone going through miscarriage and infertility can begin to have an inkling of what that person is going through, and take that out into the world and build more compassion and build more understanding and sympathy, and bring that into their medical practice as well if they are in the health field.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, you've kind of already spoken it, but like how do you see the role of storytelling in raising awareness in general about the realities of infertility and miscarriage?
Well, I think it's, if you don't have the stories, you can't begin to understand. And, you know, so many times I would tell my story to somebody, and all of a sudden they would pour forth their own story of loss. And before that, it was something that was kept deep inside. And whether that was shame, or whether that was just too private and too intense a moment for them that they just didn't want to break down in front of somebody, or that there wasn't this safe area of trust of like, you are going to get it. You're not going to judge me for what has happened to me, with me, for me. Without that, the silence keeps going. And so the more stories that are shared, the more people realize that, oh my God, there are so many other people going through this. I am not alone. And different, and everybody's story is different, but the commonality is that the grief is real. The commonality is that it's traumatic, and it has such a deep, deep impact on one's life, and it lives with you forever, you know, in different degrees and in waves. But whether or not you are blessed with the end, you still live with your story. And if you do have kids in the end, you still have that grief. It just lives in a different part, or it shows up in different ways, or all of a sudden you're like, wow, like for me, I'm so lucky I got my rainbow babies, but still 2.5 years into their lives, I see a pregnancy announcement and I'm still like, ugh. And I'm like, why do I still have that like knee-jerk reaction? And it's because of all the stuff that happened in the past. And now I'm in a position where like, even if I wanted to, I can't really have more kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm grieving that loss as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very complex. It's and sharing story and telling different telling stories in different ways and from different angles helps people to understand it and to normalize it and to take the stigma away and to, yeah, just to build language around it, because there is no language around infant loss.
Mm-hmm.
Not really. Like we
Yeah.
understand adult loss in a much broader sense, and we're able to, like, there's more ceremony around there, there's more protocol around infant loss. There isn't.
Mm-hmm.
There really isn't. So when you're storytelling, and the more stories that are out there, the more there's a language, and the more people can explain, this is what helps me. If you tell me this, if you do this for me, if you bring food to my house, if you just sit there and listen to me, then that is what is necessary. And you start being comfortable telling people and building that language and building ways to support somebody going through miscarriage and loss. And then it just goes generationally, right? Like you, if you feel lost in how to support somebody, but all of a sudden you know that somebody knows somebody who had a miscarriage, and you know that they were able to support them in a good way, then you can ask their advice, and it just keeps, it ripples out.
Yeah. It's almost as though it's like the culture shift, and like the cultural infrastructure really for supporting people who have these sort of taboo experiences. The storytelling is for sure, it's like what normalizes it. It's interesting. I'm just going to so statistically, the psychological symptoms associated with infertility and miscarriage are comparable to those that are associated with like cancer and HIV. And but it's interesting because it's like somebody trying to have a baby, like it's like you're not dying, so it doesn't really seem like there's like what's the unless you're in the experience, you don't really understand the grief of it. It's like it just challenges very deeply held beliefs around just what we expect from life. And then another thing is that, yeah, I mean, you spoke to trauma, and it's like, some psychologists actually recognize that infertility and pregnancy loss do form like a complex form of trauma. It's interesting. It's like, even like you talk about your kids being, you're like you're 2.5 years into parenthood, and you still kind of have this visceral response. There's this sort of growing, I think, knowledge in the medical community that's sort of acknowledging that these people, these people who are going through these struggles really need supports, and particularly even people who are pregnant. So it's like, even for me, it was like, oh, I thought once I'm pregnant, I'm going to be cured from all my anxieties and my depression and all these things. There's this one thing that I just want, and it's going to make everything better. And then once I got there, I was actually just like so anxious, the whole time. And even now my son's 7, and it's just, I have like total anxiety over anything happening to him, because it's like just waiting for the other shoe to drop constantly. So it's a very real thing. And so I just I'm so pumped about your book. And I actually just really admire, Miriam, and I know I've told you this before, and I'm just going to say it again, that it's just so admirable, like for you to put everything out there. Like it's very, it's so generous. It's such a generous offering to share your story in this way, because I mean, your story is like there's some really vulnerable stuff in here, and you're just putting it out there. And I just think it's really powerful. I've told you I wasn't going to cry, but I guess I'm going to. But it's just like your book, it like destigmatizes the experience of like infertility. It destigmatizes the experience of miscarriage. It destigmatizes the experience of becoming a single parent by choice. And it's just like the inside of the experience. I think it's just, and it's just done so beautifully. You got like, it's so, I love that you started this before you knew what the outcome is, because anyone who goes through infertility, the biggest fear is that you're never going to become a parent. So it's extra vulnerable to be to sort of have this intention of putting it out there. As you're going through.
I had that, because I didn't know what the ending was going to be. I had this ending that was open, and it was that part, you know, there's a section in the book about what grief looks like to me at the very end, and how I just hope that I'm enough as I go into my next try, you know? And that was how I was going to end the book, because I felt like it worked with whether or not I had kids. And then it took like so many people to convince me, no, 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 you need to actually, because by the time I had finished the editing process and we were well into the drawing process, I was pregnant and then had my twins, you know, but it took a lot of convincing, because I didn't want to be that person who was like, and you too, if you try hard enough, we'll have your kids, because for so many people, it's just not true. And so even today, I live with a kind of survivor's guilt, where if I'm talking to somebody who hasn't had their kids yet, or will never have their kids, or whatever, that I feel like, oh, like, I'm very reticent to talk about my happy ending, because I know what it feels like. And it can be so triggering to people. But everybody was like, oh, no, 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 you know, you tried so hard. And like, we want to know what the ending is. And so I put in that ending that I had my kids, but I kept it very short. I was like, on this day they were born, I'm lucky, the end. You know, because, you know, like their pregnancy and their birth and NICU life, that's like a whole other book, which there will be a sequel talking about that, you know, but it was not a walk in the park. But it didn't advance the story, the grand story and message that I wanted to put forth with Catalog Baby. Yeah.
I can't wait for the sequel, Miriam. Oh, thank you so much. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like everybody needs to read your book.
Also, just a little plug for Alda. If any of you ever need support, acupuncture or otherwise, from Alda, she is phenomenal. So yeah, I cannot recommend her as an acupuncturist and TCM doctor enough. She's amazing. So yes, thank you for everything that you did to support me.
It's an honor to be part of your journey. Yeah. So I don't know if there are any questions from
there's
the audience.
What about the graphic form? I think there's one that says, what about the graphic form appealed to you? I think we covered that. Yeah. Do you feel like we covered that? Okay. And what were the benefits and restrictions of the graphic novel form? I mean, the benefits we talked about. The restrictions, oh boy, you could not be verbose. The number of times that I was told, tell it with pictures, cut out the words, you know, like make it as succinct as possible. If it doesn't need words, just cut it out, and tell it with the pictures. So that was a challenge for me, because like I'd never written a graphic novel before, much less written anything for that matter. So yeah, I did a lot of research and read a lot of graphic novels, and some of them were very verbose, and so it was sometimes hard for me to kind of like really bring that in, like just clear the clutter from that. And then it's called killing your darlings, which is a horrible expression in this context. But there were so many stories that I had to cut out, because it would just have like either didn't serve the purpose of the grand story, or or because we, you know, like for various reasons, there were just so many stories that I had to cut out. So that was a bit sad for me. Yeah. All right. The drawings are stunning, but I'm wondering where the decision to go almost monochromatic came from. So the monochromatic thing, my hair used to be that magenta color. So, I mean, to be honest, part of it was expense of printing. And because of when I saw the difference in cost of printing in full color versus printing in 2-color, which would be magenta and black, those are the 2 colors, it actually worked out really well for me, because it was like, not only like, forget the whole financial side, but it also brought a new level to the story, I think, for me, because it gave a color to like the big moments, like it brings in focus on various aspects of the book and the narrative. I thought that that made it interesting to play with, right? So, you know, like there's my hair kapow moment, but like, for example, there's another image where you kind of see my innards, and everything else is kind of like the dull pinks and whatever, but then there's like bright red, bright magenta. And that's what the image is about, is that like either emotion or that body part or whatever that is that magenta. Yeah, so I think that it really helps kind of bring a different layer to the emotion and to the storytelling. Has your fertility clinic seen your book? Yes. There are at least 4 people. I know I don't know if she's actually read it, but my Dr. Taylor, my main doctor there, I know she has the book. I don't know if she's read it. The sperm donor coordinator, she's read the book. The receptionist has read the book. I know that one of the nurses that I really quite loved, and who actually went through the book and made sure that I wrote all the medical stuff correctly, she just got the book in the mail like this week. So I'm excited to know what she thinks, because she's no longer at my clinic that I was at. So yeah, there's a few people who have read it. It's also made the rounds of NICU, apparently, because a friend of mine bought the book and she had a baby in NICU, and the nurses all read it there, which was really cool, because a lot of the nurses were the same nurses that my kids had. And I wish my daughter had the support that Audrey gives. Oh man. Thank you, Bluma. Love the children noises in the background. Yeah, they're having dinner right now. They're being silly. I feel there must be a BC grant to get your book. Oh my God, wouldn't that be lovely? If you know where that grant exists to get my book into the hospitals, please forward that link to me.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much from Audrey's and myself and Liz. What a powerful evening this has been. Thank you for sharing your story. And it's a very, I agree with Alda, it's an important book, which I've got my copy and I'm going to finish tonight. Something that'll help me, I think, through my journey. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelly.
And Alda, thank you for being here and sharing this evening with Miriam. It's been just an absolute pleasure having you both here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate you guys all being there.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Oh, and more messages of thank you.
Oh.
There you go. All right.
Oh, Well, I should also say, if people are still there, if you want to follow me on Instagram and kind of continue the journey with Catalog Baby, I'll just type the message or the link in the chat.
Yes, yes, yes.
So that's my Instagram, and my website is catalog. Oops, Catalog Baby.
Excellent.
And get your copy from Audreys, because they've been an amazing support in this virtual book tour, and I'm really honored to have been part of it.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for getting in touch.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.